Alright YouTube, this is gonna be excerpts from my book and these 3 videos it looks like it's gonna be. So yeah, this one will probably be the longest excerpt. Well, I'm pretty sure it's the longest one. But this is copyrighted through the Library of Congress, and I have gone through and edited it. This is me going through and editing it. I'm almost done editing the book, and then I'll re-copyright the new abridged version. But it's still copyrighted under the Library of Congress, so you can't steal it. So I don't mind reading excerpts from my book. Alright, the book's title is called Crying Blood. And it's called Crying Blood because of my lead character. There's reasons to it, but you would have to read the book to understand. And even then you might not really understand why I titled it Crying Blood, but yeah. Anyways, so here we go. So I took off into the snowy tree line in a hope to escape up the mountain to the other side. The fact that I didn't know what lay ahead except an escape of reassurance of not having to be around anyone else. For right now, all I saw in people is a love for pain, mental or physical. A love to have others feel pain as well. I found myself needing to belong with what I am loneliness, as I could seem to be the only one who shared my love and passion. So I took off, making sure to protect this feeling away from the destruction of pain. I didn't know why I felt this feeling that cold November day. Still, I don't even looking back at it now. That this feeling of pain for seeing others in pain was the only adequate way to suffice an explanation. Anyways, I ran for miles down and walked for miles up. Yet all that met me was a vacuum of emptiness, of this pitch white. I looked at my watch, relieved to see about 10 more hours before the sheer winter darkness enveloped my existence. I moved on, eventually reaching a creek of a treeless, eventually reaching a crest of a treeless mountainy drop-off. I latched up, boarding, flying. I never felt so free, so invigorated. When I reached the bottom, my breath raced with pleasure, filled by adrenaline. I punched a frozen small stream. I bent down drinking from it. It was cold and fresh in nature. I took out my camera, taking a picture of the mountain with the skyline backdrop. It was so breathtaking, the whiteness, scarred by my board's tracks, added to this amazing experience. I hopped over the stream, continuing on. This time not back into whiteness, just trees, but instead following the stream. It must have been a few miles before I reached a blockade. A frozen waterfall with a sheer rock face. Following a rule of thumb in climbing, if you want to be successful, you must use the face's weaknesses to your advantages. I looked off and to the right and down, yet nothing promising. Just when I had just about given up, I spotted my weakness to exploit. How could I have been so stupid? Of course. Look on both sides. I rejumped the frozen stream. About half a mile back or so, when it had thinned out enough to do so, I returned back to the waterfall, walking up to the crack. Huge, might I add. I climbed down it into it, spreading my legs out as well as my arms, using my legs to keep pressure on both faces of the crack. I slowly lowered myself down at a steady pace. I was just about there or so or so I kept telling myself. My arms started to writhe, as well as my legs, shaking too from the painful strain, but I pressed on. It must have taken me all of 45 minutes, till I finally touched the hard floor once again. I collapsed. I laid on my back, gasping for air. After I caught my breath, I took a sip from a water bottle, then pulled out my camera. I took a picture of the crack in the ground that went well with the frozen waterfall in the backdrop. I took off following the frozen stream as it became wider and wider, becoming worthy of the little river. I kept on walking though, never taking a rest until about a 3.5 mile walk. I stumbled now upon a fish trapped in an uncompleted pond just off the riverside. It looked to be a good-sized salmon. It must have been swimming in this pond and was overnight trapped. When the river froze, trapping it in this pool, just with a thin layer of ice over the top of it. Why it was frozen in ice, I still to this day don't know. Anyways, I took out my hatchet, chopping clean through the ice. It took me about 8 tries, but I finally grabbed a hold of it. I used my hatchet to chop its head clean off, then to slice open its belly to pull out its guts. I rinsed it out in the pond and then threw in its guts as well. I then chopped off its tail, leaving it very much ready to eat. I unzipped the pocket in the back of my backpack, placing it inside of it for later when I had stopped my journey, having enough for that day. After about another 3 hours of walking down the river, I saw an ideal place to set up for some sleep. It was where the river bank met the tree line. I started to dig a small hole of an opening till I had dug a ways. I now had a body and a half length tunnel. Then I started to dig it open till it was long enough to lay in, with it being tall enough to sit up in it. I wiggled my way back onto the riverbank. I left my backpack next to the hole's opening. Then I cleared a circle of snow away, revealing the cold, packed dirt below. I took out my hatchet, chopping thick branches off a nearby tree, mere feet away, and then placed them in a stacked log cabin in design, leaving a hole in the center where I placed an array of smaller twigs in a small cabin design, which left an even smaller rectangular hole, of which was in the center, and left some space on the sides from the original setup, which I filled with both spaces with smaller broken up twigs. I carved a spear now out of a green branch and then speared my fish onto it. Now all that's left to do, I struck a match, dropping it into the center, lighting 4 more small fires by dropping into the spaces in between the logs. The idea was a very directional flame, using the smaller logs and branches to burn faster and catch the larger logs on fire. Using the outside logs to support my spear, which I laid on top to hold the fish over the center. I timed it, turning the spear ever so often. It took a total of about 30 minutes till it sufficed my idea of done.